Today we're doing the explainer video and answer key for the exercises in Jerome's Introduction to Latin, Chapter 7. All right. So Chapter 7 is the third declension and imperatives and a couple of new case uses. We'll skip to the lacuna set at the end. All right. Number 1, hauri aquam ex fonte. Draw the water from the source or from the fountain. All right. Number 2, the blood of kings. Sanguis regum or regum sanguis. Number 3, corpus regis regum, the body of the King of Kings. Number 4, we're going to put some of these things together. The body of the king is the font of life. Vitae fons, corpus regis est. And again, as usual, we can go with or without the est. We can put things in whatever order we want. One thing we want to make sure, though, is that our genitive modifier is close enough to the noun that it's modifying that it doesn't get confused with another noun, right? You don't want the Latin to seem to say the body of life or the font of the king. So fons vitae, vitae fontis, make sure those are together. And corpus regis or regis corpus, body of the king. Maybe put an est in the middle. Number 5, noli ponere vinum in hydrias. Do not put the wine into the jugs, right, or the hydriae. All right. Number 6, stay there, mane ibi. Or if you want to go plural, you'll say what? Manete ibi. Or if you want to say don't stay there, noli manere. All right, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. So number 7, manete homines ibi in luce. Stay there in the light, guys or men. All right, number 8, the king's will always remained. Regis voluntas, or voluntas regis, semper manebat. I'm going to go with the imperfect tense here for manebat, but you could have said mansit in the perfect tense. It's just that we haven't had the perfect tense yet. Right, and the king's will. This is what's called a subjective genitive, right? Remember, a genitive is always modifying a noun. And so that means the definition of any genitive can refer to that noun, right? So I'm going to define subjective genitive as the subject of the verbal notion implicit in the noun that it modifies, right? The will. If there's a will, then there's somebody doing that willing. There could also be an object. All right, number 9. Gustate aquas fontis bonas antiqui. See, I've shuffled the words up on you. Taste the good waters of the old fount, or the fount of old, right? Olden, antiquus has that sense to it. Old-fashioned sometimes. Number 10, the multitude will hear. Multitudo audiet. And then for number 11, we're going to grow that into a bigger sentence and say, de morte sua multitudo audiet. The multitude will hear about his death. It could also be about their own death. There's some ambiguity here. See, regularly in classical Latin, that suus is a possessive that is supposed to be reflexive. That is, the subject of the sentence is the possessor. And then if you wanted someone else to be the possessor, you would use that genitive pronoun eius, from is, ea, id, eius, eius, eius. But in vulgar Latin, it often gets used indiscriminately with eius. We'll see eius getting used a lot more often than it to refer to the subject than it really should in classical Latin. All right, number 12, we will never learn. Numquam cognoscemus. And again, in number 13, we're going to grow that into a longer sentence and say, legis verba numquam cognoscemus. We will never learn the words of the law. See, here is an example of what I was talking about earlier with number 8, right? When it's an objective genitive, as it is here, We tend to use the word of in English. Remember, O for of and O for objective. When it's a subjective genitive, we tend to use the apostrophe S in English. So remember, S for subjective. So we wouldn't say the law's words. We will never learn the law's words. We would say the words of the law. That is, the words are implying an action, right? The words are saying something. What are they saying? They're telling us the law. Although it's a bit ambiguous here, I should say, because you could make an argument that, well, isn't the law the one telling us the words? Maybe, or maybe it's the words which, once they get spoken, are what establish the law. So, not the clearest example. Let's go on. Number 14. Draw the wine, ministers. Haurite vinum, ministri. Now we're going to grow that into a longer sentence in 15. Haurite et gustate vinum. Draw and taste the wine. Number 16. Place the good wine. Pone bonum vinum, or bonum vinum pone, or vinum bonum pone. And all of those are equally valid, and it's just a question of emphasis, right? Remember, the first position and the last position are the most emphatic positions in a Latin sentence. Also, we could make that imperative plural, couldn't we? Instead of saying pone for one person, we could make it plural and say what? Ponite. Ponite. Good. Number 17. Da bonum matre vinum tuae. So I've shuffled it up on you again. Give the good wine to your mother. Right? A common saying, or at least it ought to be in every household, especially right around the time the sun is setting. Number 18. They will come. Venient. Venient. Number 19. A castello in deserto. From the castle in the desert. It could also mean from the village in the desert. In the Vulgar Latin, in the New Testament, and in the Old Testament as well, we'll find this noun castellum, which is a fort or a fortified camp, often gets used simply as town because guess where towns come from? They come from Roman army camps, right? Those Roman army camps had a way of sticking around for millennia. All right, number 20. The blood of the Son of Man remained. Sanguis filii hominis manebat, or mansit. And there you could go in any order for those words. Let's back up to the readings. Ut gustabant aquam homines videbant vinum esse. Literally, as they tasted the water, the men saw that it was wine. Or, when they began to taste the water, the men began to see that it was wine. Or more literally, they began to see it to be wine. We have an indirect statement there, yeah? All right, number 2. Iudai corpora in sepulchris ponent. The Jews will put the bodies in the tombs. Number 3. Mater dicit architriclino, hauri vinum exudria. The mother says to the feastmaster, draw the wine from the jug. Homines saepe bonum vinum ponent ante malum vinum. Men often will place or put the good wine before the bad wine. Number 5. Ponete dicit rex magnus corpora inimicorum meorum ibi ante me. Place, says the great king, the bodies of my enemies there before me. Number 6. Secundum verba prophetae in nomine filii Dei credunt, qui neque ex sanguinibus, neque ex voluntate carnis, sed ex Deo veniunt. According to the words of the prophet, they who come not from blood, nor from the will of the flesh, but from God, believe in the name of the Son of God. Right? There's a lot of jumping around that we have to do there, and this is very typical in Latin. But I'm going to go back through it again and do it more literally and keeping the words in the same order in which they appear in Latin. According to the words of the prophet, in the name of the Son of God, they believe, who, neither out of bloods, nor out of the will of the flesh, but out of God come. All right, number 7. Verbum caro panem verum verbo carnem facit. This is a quotation, or nearly a quotation, of the Pange Lingua of Thomas Aquinas. It really goes verbum caro panem verum verbo carnem efficit, which is a compound verb that means ex plus facio put together, that means to bring it about or make it out, literally. So here we have the word flesh makes the true bread flesh by means of a word. Or we might say the word who is flesh, or the word made flesh would be a bit too far because the word made is not there. All right, number 8. Mater filio suo dicebat homines vinum non habere. And if you want to go back to the Gospels for the text of this chapter, it's all there in, what is it, John chapter 2. Yeah. The mother was saying to her son, the men not to have wine, or the mother said to her son that the men did not have wine. Again, remember, an indirect statement. If the introductory verb is in a past tense and that infinitive is in the present tense, we get to translate that infinitive with a past tense in English because it's contemporaneous action to the introductory verb. So she was saying in the past that they were not having in the past. Number 9, ut gustabamus aquam non sciebamus vinum esse, sed ministri qui hauriunt tunc regis voluntatem sciebant. As we began to taste the water, we did not know that it was wine, but the ministers who draw it then knew the will of the king. Number 10, nemo signa facit quae tu facis nisi a Deo est. No one does the signs or works the miracles that you work unless he is from God. All right, that's it.